My name's Eric Friedlander, and I'm going to start the story with my spiritual journey and go on to where I am now. Well, it all started, I was at University of Kentucky, and a friend named Ellen Sparrow said there was a speaker that we need to go see. And he was coming in from the University of Southern California, and his name was Leo Buscaglia. And we went to hear him talk, and he really changed my life. He started out talking about, he was teaching special ed at the university, and he had this class, and there was one woman in the class. For some reason he had a connection with her, and their eyes would meet and kind of sparkle, and he really felt connected to her. And this went on for a few months, and he kept thinking, I need to talk to this woman. And one day she wasn't in class, and he asked where she was, and she had killed herself. And he was just so devastated. He felt like if he had talked to her, he could have made a difference in her life. And he was really depressed for a month or two and decided he couldn't teach anymore. So he took a sabbatical and went to Tibet. And he just wanted to live simply, and he was living with his family, and they really had no possessions, or they weren't upwardly mobile, or all they wanted to do was love Buddha. So there was a flood that came in one day, and he said they had to evacuate. So he said, let me help you get your stuff. And they laughed at him because their only possessions were a Buddha and a bowl. So he left with them, and just thinking more about it, he decided he was going to go back and teach. And one of the conditions was that he was going to teach a class called Love, where he would teach people how to love and things he learned. So he went back and started the class, and became the most popular class in the school. And he just wanted to bring people out of themselves. So in the class, one thing, so it was never going to happen again, that happened with the woman. He decided he was going to get to know each person really intimately. So one of the requirements in the class was that they had to meet with them and just talk about their lives and where they were. And the main assignment in the class was you had to do something for someone else out of yourself. And the people in the class were mostly affluent, never did anything for anyone. And he gave an example of one of the kids in the class who was really wealthy and was just living for his car and girls. And his assignment was to go to a nursing home. And this really changed him, because at first he didn't really want to do it. Then in a nursing home, he started to get to know people, and he'd sit down and play checkers with them and talk. And the people in the nursing home would look forward to him coming, and like the women would comb their hair and put makeup on. And it really made him see life just in a different perspective. And he did that with a lot of other kids in the class, and he told more stories about it. But this had moved me so much that I kept thinking that I'm really selfish. I mean, I never thought of love, I never thought of God. And he was just so expressive when he talked. And after the talk, I mean, there were 1,000 people there or more, he kind of zeroed in on me. And after the talk, he just gave me the biggest hug and wouldn't let go, and just looked at me and said, don't leave, I need to talk to you. So after he got done hugging most of the people, he just sat down and talked to me and wanted to know all about my life. He seemed like he wanted to know more than anyone else ever had. And he asked for my address and said we're going to keep in touch. I didn't know what to think, but I was still really moved by his talk. And that weekend, I just kept thinking about it. And a group of us went camping at Red River Gorge in Kentucky. And I was just sitting on a rock thinking about this and thinking how selfish I was, and thinking about what can I do. And all of a sudden I had this experience. And it was the same experience that Paul had in the Bible when he was walking across the desert. And he was just blinded by the light and experienced God. So, I was just bathed in light and experienced infinite bliss, and I saw Christ, and I knew I'd been around forever. And I felt like what Leo did had just totally broken down my ego. And I just saw God. and knew God was the only thing that was real, and I knew I'd been around forever, and the goal of life was just to love God. So then something weird happened in the thing. I won't get into that, but it brought me back down, and went back, and all I could think about was loving God and changing my life. And somebody gave me Autobiography of a Yogi, and before I started reading it, a special delivery came from Leo Biscaglia, and it was a book, Siddhartha, by Hermann Hesse. And Siddhartha was like a spiritual seeker, and his goal, he never really talked about finding God, but his goal was to be able to think, speak, and wait, and just have a perfectly peaceful life. So when I read that book, and then read Autobiography of a Yogi, and that seemed to be on the core path of what I was looking for. Talked about meditation and loving God and having a teacher. So I started, a few friends were into it too, like other friends were also getting into God from different directions. And I started doing Yogananda's meditations and doing his, he had like a little direction, gave you direction of how to meditate and do it every morning and night. And I did it. It felt really mechanical, but I kept doing it. And I really wanted to do something. I had just gotten my degree, and I wanted to do something where I could help out. So I got a job in a reform school and did that for a while, but it just didn't feel right. So me and another friend from Kentucky who was from New Jersey decided to go back to New Jersey and look for a job. And I got a job teaching 6th grade. He got a job teaching 7th. There was a shortage of teachers, so we had an emergency certificate and did that. And on weekends, we heard this guy was speaking in New York, and his name was Ram Dass. And he was like with Timothy Leary and into psychedelics and finding God, and went to India and finding masters. So for a few weekends we went to see him, and he was with a kind of a guru named Swami Muktananda. And I wasn't really drawn to Muktananda, but I was drawn to Ram Dass and his talks. And a few of the things really moved me. Like one was the first day we was there, he did a chant. We were in a big church, and the chant was, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And it really hit me, and I just felt like, from my experience, life was a dream, and we're just rolling along. So, and then he gave out a little book for free called Be Here Now. He gave it to everybody in the audience, and took the book home, and it had all these sayings from spiritual masters and little things on spiritual life. But the thing that hit me, there was one quote from this woman named Susie Gomez, and it says, "It's an honor if someone asks you to help them." And I felt like that's what I wanted to do. I mean, it felt like I really wanted to help people. So time went on. I read another book that really changed me. It was by Kurt Vonnegut. It was called God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. And Mr. Rosewater had a lot of money, and I won't get into the book, but he spent his life helping people. He would put notes in telephone booths and laundromats, and if you need help, call me. And if they needed money, he'd give them money. If they needed somebody to talk to, he'd talk to them. And that really had an influence on me too. So after we were done teaching school, my friend decided he wanted to go live with Swami Muktananda in India. So he took off for India, and I didn't know what to do, and I thought maybe I'd go to grad school. So I went to California. I had a friend who heard I was going to California. None of us were into Baba. Everybody in Lexington, there were like 30 people, and I'd never heard of Baba. None of these people were into Baba, but they all came to Baba individually and from different directions. I mean, a lot of the people you know, I can mention some names, but we knew each other before we were into God or anything. Some of the people were Nancy and Kathleen Gagan, Elliot Rubin, Jeff Craddock, Frank Close, Bob Morgan, Karen St. John, who lives in Narrabad now. But I knew her before. I knew her father before I knew her. Rachel, who's married to Thea, Cher, who's married to Tony Zoyce, Al Holmgren, just tons of people. So we were just friends in our days before God. I mean, there's a lot more people. Jim Whedon, Annie Lovell, who lives in Myrtle Beach now. She came there with her husband. Her husband was an accounting student. Well, anyway, I decided to go to California. And I went with a friend, and Rachel, the one who was married to Theus, heard I was coming, and she said, you could stay with me. She was living in Berkeley. So me and my friend went out and stayed with her, and I heard there was a psychedelic guru named Steve Gaskin who was given classes by the beach in San Francisco. Oh, I missed one thing. The first time I heard Baba's name, I was at a party, and this guy nobody knew came up to me. He was from Ohio, and he had the Who album, and on the back of the Who album, it said Avatar Mayor Baba. And he just said, look, Avatar Mayor Baba. And then he walked away and didn't mention it again, and that was the first time I heard Baba's name. So I got to California, and me and my friend were living with Rachel, and I mean, she was really nice because we didn't have any money, and she had an apartment, and I mean, she wasn't into spiritual things at the time. But anyway, I decided to go see Stephen Gaskin at he called it Monday Night Class, where he talked about God and truth, and Rachel didn't want to go, my friend didn't want to go, so I just went by myself, and I liked some of what he was saying, not the psychedelic part, but he talked about truth and loving God, and there were like 1,000 people there all loving God. And one of the classes, somebody said he was enlightened, sort of the same thing that Alan Cohen said when he wrote to Kitty about taking drugs, that he was on the plane. So anyway, somebody in the audience said, how can you say you're enlightened when Mayor Baba said, what you're seeing is just the shadow of the planes? And that was the second time I heard Mayor Baba's name. So it didn't really stick with me, but I remembered the name. And a few weeks later, I got a call from a friend in Tallahassee, Florida. He asked me to be best man in his wedding. And I wasn't really doing anything. So I just got out in San Francisco and held up a sign, I need a ride to Florida. And 10 minutes later, some guy came along and said, I'm going that way, I could take you, I could use the company. So he drove me to Tallahassee, and I wasn't really doing anything there my first week, and I thought, well, maybe I should go to grad school here. But it was starting in 2 weeks. So I went to see the head of the department, psychology and counseling, and we really hit it off. And I said, I'd like to go to grad school. He said, well, it starts in 2 weeks, but we just hit it off. And he said, okay, I'll admit you. And I said, one thing is that I don't have the tuition. And he said, well, I can waive that. So he let me into grad school. And I was there my first week, and I went to the library at Florida State, and I was thinking about Mayor Baba. I don't know, for some reason, the only book they had at the library was Listen Humanity. So I took out Listen Humanity and went home and opened it up, and there was a picture of Mayor Baba. And it was the first picture I ever saw of Mayor Baba. And I still don't know why I took out the book. But that night, Mayor Baba unveiled himself to me. Like he visited me and unveiled himself, and I knew beyond a doubt that he was the Christ. And just opened me up. I can't explain it, but it was stuck with me forever, that experience. And I didn't really know what to do with it, and I'd never met anyone who was into Baba. So I was thinking about it all the time, and I was still doing Yogananda's meditations, which I didn't really enjoy. But for a class, my first week in grad school, they wanted us to do a therapy group. So I put notices around campus at Florida State and said, graduate student doing free therapy group. And 8 people called me for the group. And they signed up. And out of the 8 people, 4 of them were following Meher Baba, and they were the only Meher Baba people in town. And they said they were having little meetings, so I went to a few of the meetings, and then they stopped. But I had somebody to talk about Meher Baba with, and I had a few friends there, and I told them about Meher Baba, and a few of the friends were really interested. And I was still like in the honeymoon period, trying to find things to read about Meher Baba. And then my friend, who went to India to be with Swami Muktananda, called me and said, I heard you're in grad school. Because we had gone through a lot together. We were both from New Jersey, went to Kentucky, majored in the same thing, went back to teach, and then went to see Ram Dass. Well, anyway, he called me and said, I heard you're in grad school, can you get me in? And he goes, I have something really important to tell you too, that really changed me. And I was surprised to hear from him, because he was going to see Muktananda and never coming back. So anyway, I went to talk to the head of the department. The next semester was starting, and I said, this is unusual, but I have a friend, and can you let him into grad school? And the guy said, this is really unusual, but we'd gotten to be friends, so he said, okay. So a few weeks later, my friend pulled up in a car, and I was with one of the women I told Baba about, and she was really drawn to Baba too. And my friend got out of the car, and she saw a halo around him, and they kind of fell in love, and they've been married for like 50 years now and live in Myrtle Beach. But I said, what was so important you had to tell me? And he said, well, I never made it to Muktananda's. I went to this place called Mirabad and found Meher Baba, and he's the avatar. And I said, I already told him that I was already into Meher Baba. And it was really weird, because we came to Baba simultaneously in different parts of the world. And then we started telling other people about Baba, and the group kind of grew. And we just run into people. One guy was at a little party and saw him jumping up and down, and he looked interesting, and I went up and talked to him, and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, he's came here and knew some friends, and had just gone to the Baba Center in Myrtle Beach. His name was Bobby Bougia. And so he was one of the first Baba people I met. And then soon after that, Wendy Haynes Connor started school there. She was in special ed, and she moved into the dorms, and we started having Baba meetings. And the group just really grew and grew. And somebody had some books that I read, like discourses, and I was following Baba really strictly then. I mean, about things he said about, I wasn't into drugs. I mean, I tried like marijuana and stuff in college, but I wasn't into drugs. But just the stuff he said really strictly about drugs, and about how the first step in spirituality is not to speak ill of others, and not to have sex before marriage, and things like that, which is weird, telling people that stuff. I mean, like telling girls telling what Baba said about it. Like one weird thing happened. We had a little birthday party for me now, and some woman wrote me a card and said, for your birthday, I'm giving you my body. So I had to pull out discourses and tell her what Meher Baba said. And she must have thought I was really an idiot. But well, anyway, another interesting thing happened. We had a house, me and some of the other people, and people knew they could crash there. And we had a big picture of Meher Baba over the mantle, and people would ask who Meher Baba was, and we'd always tell them. And one guy was going on a walking tour of the country. He had just got his degree in architecture from Yale, and he had done some projects for Vista, and he heard about our house and came there and saw the picture of Meher Baba and was asking about him. And this person, I was in India a few years later, and I saw this person there. It was Ted Judson, and he went to Baba and Meher Baba in '74 and never left. And I'm not sure if he knew about Meher Baba, but when he saw the picture at our house, he was asking about him. So I was totally devoted to Meher Baba. Right in the beginning, I gave up, Yogananda's meditation, and I was really happy to give it up because you had to meditate in the morning before bed, and it was really nice just to go to sleep at night without having to meditate. So me and my friend who had come down there to go to school, I waited for him till he graduated, and we both got our masters and went to Boston looking for jobs. But it was really hard because we just had our masters and there were so many PhDs out of work in Boston because there were so many colleges. So I did odd things when I was there, like substitute teaching. But my friend missed that woman I was talking about before so much. He went to Tallahassee and worked in a mental hospital there. So I was there, and I started going to Charles Haynes, who was at Harvard. He had meetings there once a week. It was really nice, meeting up with lots of people. And one unusual thing happened. One night, I saw that Kirpal Singh, who Baba said was a saint, was speaking at Harvard. And I knew I shouldn't go because Baba had a directive. Once you find me, you shouldn't go see saints or masters or seek them out. And for some reason I felt drawn to go, and I knew Baba didn't want me to go. So I went over to Harvard, and there were like a few thousand people in the audience, and I was like 50 rows back and looked like everyone else. And I kept thinking, Baba, 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 and I was thinking, as long as I'm here, I'm going to say Baba's name. One thing Baba did say about Kirpal Singh, that he was a saint, and Baba did go to visit Kirpal Singh once, and Kirpal Singh went to visit Baba once. So anyway, I was just sitting there in the middle of the crowd going, Baba, Baba, and before Kirpal Singh talked, he got up in the podium, and he looked in my eyes and motioned for me to leave. And I felt like, I'm not sure, but I felt like I was like an unconscious agent for Baba, and Baba wanted me there just to give his name. So before Kirpal Singh started speaking, I just got up and left. And that was weird. So anyway, that was my unusual experience in Boston. So I had a friend who called me up from Kentucky, knew I was looking for a job, and she was an administrator at a mental hospital there, and said, come down, we'll hire you. So I went down and got a job and started working at the mental hospital. And after a few months, a new program was starting at the mental hospital. And we had this really hip psychiatrist come in from California. His name was Steve Topel, and he was sort of my psychology mentor. And he was a really cool guy. He had a long gray afro and a gray beard, and sometimes he'd dress in robes. And he asked me if I wanted to come to the unit. So me and him kind of organized the unit. We did all the hiring, and I had a few Baba friends in Lexington. One was Pam Butler Stone, Al Holmgren, and so we had like 3 or 4 people at the unit. And I told Steve Topel about Baba, and he said, just do what you want, bring your lifestyle to the unit. So we had a unit of like 30 or 40 patients. It was a residential unit, so they all lived there. And there were all kinds of patients, bipolar, chronic schizophrenics, acute psychotics, alcoholics, geriatric patients. And the hospital thought we put everyone together and kind of help each other. So we started the unit, and I put a huge poster of Baba in the meeting room. So I told everyone about Baba, and like Steve said, bring your lifestyle to the unit. So everybody who worked there, all the other staff, learned about Baba, and which was weird in the mental hospital in Kentucky. And every morning, people were they'd get up in the morning, drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, and sit around and watch television. So I wanted to change that and just get them out of their, whatever they were into. So in the morning it was mandatory. There was a 1/4-mile loop in front of the hospital, and we all had to run or walk on the loop. And people complained, but I think when they were hurting so much and their lungs were burning, they couldn't think about whatever was their insanity. Even the old geriatric people, and we also had people who had too many shock treatments. So after we did that, we'd kind of do a little yoga thing and stretching and massage each of the shoulders, and then we'd all scream. And then they could go in and take showers and eat breakfast instead of just plopping down. And we changed their diets. They weren't allowed to smoke on the unit or have coffee, and it was a really good unit. I mean, the staff really got into it, and I felt like one of my few talents was talking to acute psychotics and chronic schizophrenics. I mean, it really felt like I tuned into them. But whenever I talked to him, I felt like it wasn't me, it was Baba. I mean, coming through me, and if there was any change, I felt like it was Baba. So I went around town and with the unit, and I got the community center to let us go there once a day to go roller skating. And we would do that. I mean, the age group in the thing was like 18 years old to 80-year-olds. So we'd hold the older people's hands and go roller skating. I went to the movie theater in town, and they would let us go to the movies once a week. I went to the used clothing store, and they would let us come once a month, and all the patients can get us 7 articles of clothing. So, I mean, it was really a great unit. It was a great Baba unit. And friends, especially Baba friends from Lexington, I mean, by then, a lot of the people I mentioned had come to Baba in all different directions, and we had Baba meetings with like 30 people. And sometimes we'd have the Baba meetings at the mental hospital, which is funny. And even the chaplain, when Pam Butler Stone got married in Washington, our hospital chaplain went up to Washington to do the wedding. I mean, it was sort of a Baba wedding, so sort of permeated the atmosphere. And this went on for a while. I mean, I even had a girlfriend then, and she would come and hang out at the hospital, and after hours I'd hang out there. It was such a good place to be. We'd have little pajama parties for the patients. So that went on for a while, and then after a year, Steve Topel felt like he didn't want to do it anymore. It was too much pressure for him, and being the head of the unit, because like we were going through all our Baba stuff, and he had to direct it all and do the responsibility and prescribe the drugs. So since he didn't want to do it anymore, the unit ended. And right at that time, my mother died. I had a breakup, and this was in 1974, so I decided I'm just going to go to India. So I left everything, left my job, and went to India. I felt like I could always do something when I came back. So I didn't really talk to anyone about it. I just got a plane, went to Mumbai, didn't know how to get there. Luckily I went to Mumbai and not Delhi, and asked how I got there. How'd I get to Ahmednagar? And somebody sent me to the bus station, so I took a bus all the way there, which was kind of fun, looking at the scenery going by, and got to the bus station and asked how I get to the Baba Center, and somebody put me in a bullock cart, and they dropped me off there. And I remember Adi Kairani saw me in the bullock cart, and he came running out because he thought the bullock driver was overcharging me. I mean, it was like 10 cents, and Adi was yelling at the bullock cart driver, and I thought, he doesn't seem very spiritual, and I was expecting people to be real loving, and he really seemed mad. So anyway, I got there, and he put me up in this place called Mayor Colony, which was really primitive, and I wasn't overwhelmed. I didn't really experience anything I was expecting. The only thing I experienced was when the plane was landing in Mumbai. I felt like something in me snapped and said, "You're home now." And that was the main experience I had. So I was in a room with some people I didn't know. One was Dennis McCabe and Jim Meyer and one other person. So I got to know them and went to the Samadhi every day, and we'd ride our bikes to Mirabad. And it was just amazing meeting Mira and Mani and Go here. So one day I was alone. This made me feel good. I was alone talking to Mira. And Mira asked me if I had any experiences with Baba. And I did. I'll tell him later. But I had one with Yogananda, and this kind of popped in my head, because in the beginning, Yogananda appeared to me like in a visitation and said, Meher Baba's the avatar. And this was in the early stages. So for some reason that popped in my head, so I told Meera that Yogananda appeared to me and said, Meher Baba's the avatar. And she got so excited, Mani was like 30 feet away. She goes, Mani, Yogananda told Eric that Meher Baba was the avatar. And it just made me feel good because she was so happy about it. And anyway, other things that happened, Dennis McCabe said that Baba was really into Nero Wolfe, the mystery writer, and that Mani would read him stories at night from Meher Baba, and she'd do all the voices. And Dennis McCabe said, I never read a murder mystery in my life, but Dennis McCabe said to read this. So I took it one day into the Samadhi, and back then you could stay in the Samadhi all day. So I lied down next to Baba's tomb inside the Samadhi, and not one person came in, so I lied there for like 2 hours and read the whole book. And since then I really got into Nero Wolfe, and I've read everything he had a few times. So after 3 weeks I was ready to go back, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had some friends in Boston, and they said, one was Al Holmgren and Kim Witkowski, who used to be married to Walter. She was in Lexington too there during that time, so she also didn't know about Baba then. But I think her and Pam came to Baba at the same time. But anyway, I stayed with them and wasn't really doing anything for a few weeks, and then I decided I'd go back to Lexington and work in the mental hospital. So I worked in a unit there, was for young acute psychotics, and the theory of the psychiatrist running the unit was just put them to sleep for as long as you can so the psychosis wouldn't do any brain damage. And there was no real therapy, you just wanted them to sleep through it and then go home. I mean, hopefully they wouldn't have another break. So, and then right at the end of that, my mother, who was in New Jersey, who was really healthy, had a cerebral hemorrhage and died. And my father, who wasn't healthy, she was 55. My father, who wasn't healthy, he was 60. He was a really bad diabetic, and I mean, he was functional. And I told him if he came down to Lexington, I'd help him get started and do something. So he found a Hallmark card store that was for sale, and he thought he could do that. So before he went, he arranged it, and he bought the Hallmark card store and was really into it. And I had one friend who wasn't working. His name was Steve Jameson, who became Woden, and he's in Myrtle Beach now. He's a Baba artist. He decided he'd work for my father. So I'm really indebted to him because he helped my father. He helped design the store. I mean, he was really creative, and which I wasn't at all. And he helped my father with everything, and he worked there full time. And at night, he would take my father out to eat. He would take my father to the gay bar, which he hung out at. I mean, he was gay, but my father wouldn't accept that he was gay. He thought he just hadn't met the right person yet. But anyway, I'm real indebted to Steve Jameson for everything he did for my father. And also in a few years, well anyway, I had to stop by my father's apartment every morning, and he had really bad glaucoma, and he was going downhill. His heart was going, his kidneys, and all the side effects from diabetes. He was really having trouble seeing, and it put drops in his eyes. And one night, he said that he felt like his body was like a used car, and you couldn't keep replacing the parts. And showed me all his papers, and he asked me what Baba said about death. And I told him what I remembered from discourses that I spoke to him a lot, just about the hell state and heaven state. And I told him, if you're a good person, which I said you were, you don't have all these desires or bad things that you've done in your life that'll bring you to a hell state. It'll be really pleasant, and you'll be with God and see God and experience God. And I told him a little about my experiences, like infinite bliss, and that you'll be around forever and your soul never dies. So anyway, we talked a lot about that, and he gave me some advice in living. He just said, love's the most important thing. And then he knew I was really giving from all the stuff I'd been doing the last few years. And he warned me about this one person, which came back to haunt me. Call this person X. And he said, please don't do anything with X and don't help X. And X is evil, which was really out of character for my father to say. But anyway, I came back the next morning and found him to do his drops, found him that he had died. So I just put my arm around him and said the Master's Prayer and called my friend, and she took over the store. I was helping in the store too. And anyway, went back, and I had to leave my job at the mental hospital because he had a big investment in that store and I had to take care of it. And I was going to give it to my sister, and I told her she could have it. And she came down a month later with the family and took over the Hallmark store. But it was funny in the Hallmark store because I had to work there for a while. And I was so used to the mental hospital. And in the mental hospital, when you're talking to people, you make eye contact and you're into them and you're holding the hand, and people would come into the Hallmark store. And I felt like I was coming on too strong because for those years I'd been in the mental hospital. So anyway, I decided to start doing entrepreneurial stuff. Like, it was a big shopping center in front of the Hallmark store, and I sold Christmas trees there for a few years, and that gave me enough to last all year. And I was just kind of doing that, seeing what I was going to do, and I kept doing volunteer work. I kept thinking about Leo and that I needed to do stuff and not do things just for money. And when I was in the mental hospital, we really got into nutrition. We had a nutritionist come in once a week, and it kind of got me into nutrition. So I thought, well, maybe I could open a health food store. One guy had a health food store in Berkeley called Holy Foods, named Alan Talbot. And I heard about that store, and I felt like I could do it. And so I opened a health food store and had a big picture of Baba in the store, and everybody come in would hear about Baba, and did that for like a year. During that time, I got married, had a baby, and I couldn't really keep doing the health food store because my wife was in school getting a teaching certificate, and I wasn't making enough. And a friend came in one day and said, let's go to real estate school, which is something I didn't want to do. I didn't really want to do something just for the money. But he kind of insisted, and I felt like maybe Baba wanted me to do this. So I went to real estate school, and I said, I'll do it, but only if I could share what I'm making with other people. So I went to school and started out really quickly. I mean, my first 3 weeks, I was working for this office, and this office only took part-time people. So he took me in, and after 3 weeks, I was doing so much business, I was dominating the office. So he told me I had to leave because I was just doing too much, and all he had like was part-time retired women. And I was selling so many houses. I mean, I felt like Baba was doing it all. And I had a friend who was a broker who was retired, and he said he would I can come and he'd be my broker. And if I gave him $100 for each transaction, which was really good because most brokers want like 50% of what you're making or 40%. But it was funny, the first office I was at, he took like 40% for the first million, and then you keep getting more and more. But my first 3 weeks, I was over the limit, so he wasn't even making anything from me because I was doing so well. And then I did real estate, and it just really took off. And I really helped a lot of people just financially and helped them get started in real estate. And it took off so much. I was buying properties, but still, whatever I did, I made sure I shared with other people, or I would take people in for partners. And I mean, I felt like the money was just pouring in. But one thing I did, getting back to my father, I promised I wouldn't help this person or be involved with X. And I started helping X. And X did so many things to hurt me. I mean, just one thing after another. I just felt X kept doing things. I mean, and I kept thinking, well, I'm making all this money. If it's that important to X to make money, I'll just let X do it. And this went on and on for years. And finally, X, I mean, I also thought about what Leo said. I always thought about him. Like Leo said, he would hug people and try and love people, and every once in a while he was rejected. But the times he was rejected didn't make up for the hundreds of times where he was able to love people and was accepted. So maybe I was rationalizing, but I was feeling like that with X and a few other people who were really ripping me off. Finally, near the end, I helped a friend with his business, and his business was really growing. And I was involved with X with something else, and she did something to my friend where it cost him everything, and I felt like her and two other people, and I felt like I finally had to cut it off. So I just blocked him, didn't have anything to do with him. And with my friend, they had to take him to court, and I was trying to help, and I felt like Baba's father, when he had this business and he signed it with another person, and the person took it over and took everything that Baba's father had. And Baba wouldn't fight back. He wouldn't testify against the person and just lost it all. And eventually Baba's father died, and the guy or his family finally apologized, but I felt like I couldn't do it, so I just blocked these three people. I told them I couldn't talk to him anymore. And it was really a lesson from Baba, because all along when Mex was doing this stuff to me, I kept feeling like Baba's running the whole show and Baba's really doing this. And I had enough money, so, it wound up, losing probably a few $1 million, what all these people were doing. But I had enough, and I felt like I was okay. So I kept thinking I didn't want to have to deal with them in the next life, and I thought maybe this was happening because I did something to them in a past life. And I really meant it. So my mantra was, I love you, I don't like what you did to me or what you said about me, and hopefully I'll never have to see you again. And this has been a few years, and I just haven't seen him again, and whenever I think about him, I just try and think good things about him. So, but it still affected my friend, and he's still devastated. It really hurt him. And this friend kind of got into Baba too, but so anyway, that was, another thing I was indebted to Steve Jameson about was that he orchestrated my wedding. I had a Baba wedding. He made me a white tuxedo and a pink tie and white shoes, so I'm really thankful what he did. He put a big Baba picture on the podium and organized the music, so that was nice. It upset the relatives who didn't know Baba was going to be a part of the wedding. So over the last years, I've sort of cut down in real estate. I started selling my properties. One of the biggest firms in town wanted me to come and be part of their investment property thing, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. I just quit doing it. After probably like 5 people really took advantage of me and cost me all the money. And for the rest of my life, during this time, I've always done volunteer work, feeling like what Leo said, like I worked at Shriners Hospital and took care of the kids there. I worked at this place called Catholic Action Center and dealt with homeless people, other things. For the last 6 years, I've been at this warehouse. And wherever I am, I bring Baba with me. And this warehouse is behind a church. And people donate furniture and appliances and kitchen stuff and clothes. And Wednesdays and Saturdays, people in need could get it for free or by appointment, like if their refrigerator breaks and can't get another one. I was going to mention something else that happened in India, spending time with Erich, I felt like Erich was real critical of me. Like he'd tell me I'd ask too many questions, but I had Erich there. I felt like I wanted to ask him all this stuff. And then he told me I was going to get in a really bad car accident in 1982. He read my palm, and that was kind of disturbing because this was 1974. And then he told me I could never be a public speaker because I talk too much in a monotone. He goes, don't even try. But whenever I spoke to groups, I'd always think about what Erich said. Like I was in the middle of doing real estate, and I knew the dean of the university there, and he asked me if I teach some classes, like in abnormal psychology. So I did that, and I thought that'd be good just as a change from real estate. So I did that for a while. And whenever I do things like that, I go, see Erich, I can talk to people. And then Erich told me later about, he said he probably shouldn't read people's palms. He said one time he read somebody's palm, and he told the family their son was going to die within the year. And it ruined the family's life, and the son never died. So Erich said, I don't know why I do this. Because they thought if Erich said that, and he was Baba's right-hand man, it's going to happen. And then, so at the warehouse, another thing that reminded me of Erich, that one time, they're really Christian and think Jesus is the only way, and before we start working, they read a prayer. And one time they said, does anyone have a joke? So I had a joke, and then after that, for 3 years, they wanted me to tell a joke before the meeting. And it was hard coming up with jokes, but I had a friend, he's sort of a Baba comedian, Alan Talbot, the one who started the health food store, and he'd send me a few jokes a week just to keep it going. And I had all different people giving me jokes, and people liked the jokes so much that people would come to our meeting just to hear the jokes. And one time somebody heard about him, and they had a coffee shop in town, and they heard my jokes and asked me if I'd come to the coffee shop to do stand-up. And I was just thinking, Erich, what do you think about that? And had another experience at the center I was going to talk about. I forgot about that. One time Adi Kairani was here for a week, and I went to see him with some people. He said his shoulders were stiff, so I asked him if he wanted a shoulder rub. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, why don't you come every day? So I came every day, and for like 10 minutes I'd give him a shoulder rub, and he said, let's just talk. We could talk about anything, let's just get to know each other. So for a week I went to see him, and we just talked. One day somebody asked if they could come, and they came, and Adi said, I'm sorry, this is just time for me and Eric. So we would just talk about everything and really get to know each other. And I remember, Adi would tell me stories about his life and his love life. He talked about how he was really in love with this woman once, and she was really spiritual, and he was really attracted to her and thought this is the one. So he brought her to see Baba and told Baba, here she is, she's the one. And Baba was really adamant and said, you're not marrying Adi, you'd have a terrible marriage, and Adi's with me, he's mine, so forget about it. And so Adi was a little devastated, but he felt good when Baba said, you're mine. And then Adi would tell me other stuff, like weird health food fads he was on. And Adi said he was a runner too. When he was younger, he'd run 5 miles a day. And he said when he did the New Life, he was sleeping out in the cold, and it really affected him, and his bones were sore and stiff, and he said for the rest of his life, he felt kind of arthritic. He wasn't able to run anymore. And I think after a month or so, Baba gave people the option of leaving the New Life, and so Adi left. But anyway, we would just talk about everything. So I felt like I got closer to Adi, because before, the other thing he said that really stuck with me, he said people are always waiting for something, and it never comes. Like when you're little, you think it'll be better when you start school. When you start school, you think it'll be better when you graduate. When you graduate, you think everything will be all right when you start your job. And then you think it'll be better if you get married and start a family or whatever. And then you think it'll be better when your kids are gone. And then you think it'll be better when you retire. But he said that moment never comes. I mean, it's never the thing where everything's better. I mean, and we're all waiting for that. So how he told me that, it really stuck with me. And another thing that happened when I was at the center, and this sort of dominated my life for a while, a friend called me up and said, let's run the Louisville Marathon, which is 26 miles. So I said, okay. And I was running a little and working out. So I started running a little farther and a little farther every day and kind of gave it all to Bob. And I was living here at the time for a while, and I'd run for hours. I had one friend that was a runner named Peter Ripa, and we'd run for like an hour or two on the beach, and we really got into it. It was really fun. And then I decided to run the Louisville Marathon. And at the marathon, I ran it, and I met all these people from Lexington, and they said, why don't you meet up with us and we can run together. So I had this instant running group. So for years, like for 10 years, they were my best friends, and we run together and do everything together and travel around the country and run to races. But none of them were at all interested in Baba. But I felt like running all these races, I was doing it for Baba. Because Baba has a quote, and I'm not paraphrasing. He goes, if you want to be a good runner, you have to race. And I tell people that, and they don't think he said that, but it's on page 41 of Listen Humanity. And those are the exact things. If you want to be a good runner, you have to race. So I became a good runner, not a great runner. Like I'd never run races, so I did that for a long time. And I mean, I still run every day. I still run at the center when I'm here. It's kind of the highlight, one of the highlights of my center trip. Every morning I get up at like 5:30 and run on the paths. And then I sit in Lagoon Cabin for a half hour, and I feel like I've done a lot starting my day. But I have all these routines now that I do, like running, giving it to Baba, but I say the prayers every morning. And then I throw in my own, Baba, I entrust this day to you, and I try and love you more, Baba. And I give you every thought, word, thought, and deed I'll commit today, and helping you remember that you're always my constant companion. I do that after the prayers, and then start the day. And then like when I drive to the warehouse or certain places, Jim Meyer used to say, when you're in your car, you should do Satchitananda. So I do that when I'm driving certain places, and that helps me remember Baba. Then at night I change it a little. I go, Baba, I entrusted this day to you, and I give you every word and thought deed I committed today, and help me to remember that you're always my constant companion. And then Mimi gave me this little thing of Baba water, that Baba used the water and people water it down over the years. So I put the Baba water on my tongue, and then I'll read something from Baba, and that's one of the things I do, part of my routine. The other part of my routine is I saw Margaret Crass's dancers talking, and they said Margaret Crass had the dancers meditate 10 minutes every day in their picture. So I started doing that, where you look in Baba's eyes. And then I felt Baba telling me, do 15 minutes. So I moved it up to 15 minutes. And then a year later, he said, do it a half hour. And I said, Baba, a half hour, that's a lot. And he said, this is the last time. So for like the last 5 years, I've been doing that. Every day is just holding up Baba's picture and looking at his eyes. And it has to be a picture where the eyes look at you. And last thing I was going to talk about, I never have experiences at the center. I never have experiences at Baba's house. I mean, the only experiences I had were Baba's dreams, and I had like 6 Baba's dreams after he unveiled himself to me. And one, Baba was just looking at me, and I just said, I can't believe I'm looking at God, and Baba just said yes. And another dream, he looked at me and said, marry me, Eric, I'm all you'll ever need, I'm all you'll ever need. I wasn't sure what to make of that one. I talked about that with Jane Haynes for a lot. Then another one, I was with Baba for a long time in the dream, and it was really real. I mean, Baba said, you can never say that you haven't met me, because you've met me, and you've met me right now, and this is it, you're with me. And the last Baba dream I had was really weird. And for some reason I was in Asheville, and I was at these people's house I didn't really know, Debbie and Peter Nordine, and I was sleeping there. And I was in bed, and there was like that much room in the bed next to me. And some woman I didn't really know got in and lie there, and we just kind of melted together. And our souls touched, and Debbie and Baba walked in, and Debbie said, "You two fit together perfectly." And Baba said, "Tell her the dream when you see her." And I was hesitant, and Baba just said, "Tell her the dream." And that was the last time I saw Baba in a dream. And the last thing I was going to talk about, last October, it was really tragic. I was running at 5:30 in the morning, and it was raining and dark, and I stepped on a speed bump and fell down and broke my hip. I kind of hobbled home and went to the emergency room and had surgery, and that was probably one of the worst things that happened to me in my life. I mean, I was really laid up and couldn't sleep for a month, and all I do all night was punch the pillow and go, "Baba, Baba, Baba, Baba." And I'd forget, and then 10 minutes later, because I'd be up for all night for 4 months. So, I mean, after a few months I was back to normal and able to run again, but it was really hell for those 4 weeks. One thing that really helped was my friend Alan Connie would call me every day and talk to me for as long as I wanted. So every day I would look forward to his calls, and we'd talk about Baba. So I felt like the worst things that happened in my life, I think about this, were my parents dying, breaking my hip, and Donald Trump being elected president. And I don't know if he sees this or not, but I'm willing to talk to him about it. And that's where my life is now. I feel like I don't really want to travel anymore. The only places I want to come are here in India. And I usually go to India every year. I try to. Okay. Thank you, Jai Baba.